Hey gang, it's your old buddy Clay here. I'm at Mountain Music Exchange, and today we're going to talk about some Epiphone Les Pauls. Now the Les Pauls that I'm going to be talking about today are sort of what I would consider like the standard series sort of Les Pauls, in that they're bound, some sort of burst, although some of them have some non-burst finishes too, carved top, you know, what folks would consider a real Les Paul. So before we get started, actually I'm going to go ahead and grab this guitar here and we're going to have a look at that. For reference, this is a 50s model, Epiphone Les Paul Standard 50s. Check out a couple of cool things on that. The headstock vintage style tuners, which is super cool. And of course the truss rod that more closely resembles its Gibson counterpart. Now before I get to really digging in on this, just want to throw out a couple of things and remind everybody real quick. All the new Epiphones have CTS pots, 18:1 ratio tuners, graph tech nuts, lock tone bridge, and of course now they have an Indian Laurel fingerboard with a 12-inch radius. There may or may not be some discussion on the Indian Laurel fretboards as far as, you know, is it as good as Rosewood? It's probably not as cool as Rosewood in all honesty, but it's got a porous feel. It looks the part very well. And to be honest, if you didn't tell me, I wouldn't really dispute it. In looking at this guitar up close, I actually much prefer the Indian Laurel fingerboard to the Palfaro fingerboard we'd seen the last year or so, maybe 2 years. So I much prefer this style. It looks more Rosewood-ish. This guitar is gorgeous all the way around. It is really cool. Again, graph tech nut. I've got my hands on this neck, and this is a big, chunky neck. It feels good in your hand. If you're into that sort of what some folks I've heard call like the Gibson neck, this one will do it. I mean, it has got that big neck. It really feels like a 50s style, you know, if you've played a Les Paul traditional from Gibson, or if you've played in any other type of guitar with a 50s rounded neck on the Gibson end of things, this feels like that. It really feels good all the way around in your hand. It's just got a big profile, and it will remind you that you are playing a 50 spec guitar. This particular one here, this is the 50s Les Paul Standard, of course, again, loaded up with Probucker 2, Probucker 3 pickups, again, the lock tone bridge. This one actually has the ABR retaining wire, and I don't know if you can see that from here. I hope you can, but it is truly vintage spec, although it does still have the post like a Nashville style, so it's not directly into the body like you would see on like a Gibson Les Paul or a classic or custom from back when kind of thing. But still cool. You got the thumb bleeders here if you want to, you know, your pointers so you can know exactly what number you're on. So you know if you need to be at 9 1/4, you can get right there. Okay, so this one here is in vintage sunburst finish. You can also get that in heritage cherry sunburst, and of course gold top, which is a gorgeous look as well. Another thing I noticed that I thought was really cool about this guitar, on the back, black plastic work, which is cool. Again, more closely resembles its Gibson counterpart, and some folks were not a fan of the cream plastic work. It didn't bother me, but I like this better. And I'm looking at the neck here, and that reminds me the 50s model has the long neck tenon. That is a feature that has been much argued about, much loved. It's, you know, something that people feel like a 50s spec Les Paul should have, and Epiphone went the distance. This one has the long neck tenon. So if you are in that camp that believes this will sustain much better because of that, this is the one to have because it has it. Okay, so next up, I've got a much heavier, but still feels good, Gibson Les Paul Standard 60s. Now, looking at the front of the headstock here, you'll notice immediately Grover tuners instead of the vintage style tuners. That's just to sort of visually separate the 50s from the 60s. Again, the standard truss rod cover. No long neck tenon that I'm aware of here. If there is, and I am misquoting some spec that I've written somewhere, please let me know in the comments below. Gorgeous flame top on this iced tea finish. Now there's also a bourbon burst finish that's a gorgeous finish for this as well. Trying to think of the other finish. I think it's honey burst. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous guitar. The other finish is ebony, I'm sorry. You can see that the knobs are also different, sort of to resemble sort of more what you would have seen on a 60 era Les Paul. Also, these knobs are both reflective of what you would see right now on Gibson's 50s and 60s spec guitars, respectively. Again, black plastics on the back. The neck profile on this, much, much slimmer. I mean, it feels more, well, of course it feels like a 60s profile neck, right? But it feels more like a traditional Epiphone would have felt. And that's not a bad thing, that's a good feel, because I had one forever and ever when I was growing up learning to play guitar, and it had this neck on it, and I really like it. That being said, I think I still prefer the 50s neck, but the slim taper neck does feel good. It's a good neck. I think that's about got us on this. It's got some cool specs for sure. The colors I actually prefer on the 60s spec guitar. I like vintage sunburst. I like the cherry sunburst. The cherries that I've seen don't have this sort of clown burst look to them either. They look good. I just think the iced tea and the bourbon burst, I just think those are just really, I think they show off the flame a little better, at least in the ones that I've seen up close. There may be better examples of each. It's very possible. Of the ones that I've seen up close. And also, while I'm at it too, this has the same ProBucker 2, ProBucker 3 pickups as well, and also the same ABR retaining wire that still goes into the posts like a Nashville style bridge, so it's sort of a combination, a hybrid of the two. Yeah, these colors are gorgeous. This guitar is cool. Let's move forward, shall we? All right, now this one is a little different in a couple of different ways. When I mentioned Honeyburst earlier, this is the Honeyburst guitar. This is the Epiphone Les Paul Classic. Also, something I'm noticing here that I should mention, all of the new Epiphones that I've seen that I've held in my hand also have the number now stamped into the back of the headstock. Again, similar to, say it with me, it's a Gibson counterpart, right? So, this Honeyburst finish on this plain top is absolutely gorgeous in person. I really, really dig how the light falls through it, how the grain looks. I've seen some older Epiphone plain tops, even some Gibson plain tops that were less than inspiring, we'll say, but this one is not. It looks really, really good. Now you'll notice, of course, visually, no thumb bleeders here, and also you'll notice zebra pickups. Now the reason that this has zebra pickups is one, because its counterpart has it over on the Gibson catalog, and two, visually it's a little separating because this guitar does in fact have coil tap. And I did check beforehand. So, yeah, you can also get this in Honeyburst, Cherry Burst, and Ebony. I've seen the Cherry Burst in this, and it's a good burst. Again, it's not clowny, it's not super yellow in the middle and super red on the out. I mean, it's a good fade. The red fades in and out well. It's a good sort of correct-ish red. As far as that goes though, with this guitar, again, Graphtec nut as with the rest. This one also has the ABR style retaining wire into the Nashville style posts, Indian oil fingerboard, Grover tuners. This one has the slim neck, so if you're wondering if the Classic in any way splits the difference or how it feels versus the 60s or 50s Les Paul, this has the slim neck, so it's going to feel more, if I blindfolded someone or myself or anybody and put this in their hands, it would feel more like a 60s guitar. So I think that's actually got us. Guys, I really appreciate you all. These guitars are all really cool. There's going to be a 59 Les Paul that comes out, and I'm trying to figure out a cool video with that. If you've got any ideas on that, throw it in the comments below. And look, I already know one of them is going to be played. We're working on that, and we will get that to you shortly. Guys, thank you all a ton. For Mountain Music Exchange, I'm Clay. You rock. Have a good one.